by morning, he developed a raging, fever.
Aww.
What's up, guys? It's Kictor. I'm back with my beautiful girlfriend, Stitch, who's going to give us a PowerPoint on The Ballad of Sword and Wine, Volume 2, also known as QJJ, or Quidj, as I've been saying recently.
Yeah, I wish you wouldn't do that. So, Volume 2 starts out in the deep cold of winter, perfect for these chilly months, unless you live somewhere where it is not chilly. QJJ will have its fair share of action in later volumes, but right now both Chiye and Shen Zechuan still have their hands tied in the capital. And as we get deeper into the unfolding intrigues of the capital, many of the scenes that take place in this volume are just conversations between two or more characters as they discuss recent events in the palace and scheme their next move. So if you enjoyed the historical world building of Thousand Autumns or Golden Terrace, you may be quite at home with this type of story here, but like with the first volume, I can dangle a few treats to string you along the most juicy and interesting bits between the machinations of the capital, because this is the volume in which Shen Zechuan falls in love.
Oh.
Yes! How juicy is that?
Very juicy.
Right? So let's get into it.
Are you winning, son? Grand Mentor Chiye. And, Shen Zechuan is not winning.
Not really. So when last we met, Shen Zechuan had just tortured Chiye to death when he and Chiye end up in bed together for some detailed hate fucking. But the truth of the matter is a little bit more nuanced than that. Where we pick up in Volume 2 is the morning after, in which Shen Zechuan goes to see his masters at the Temple of Guilt. So Grand Mentor Chiye knows what he's done. The murdering, not the banging. And warns him about the consequences of letting hatred poison his heart. Like, killing is one thing. He's like, that's fine. Killing is fine. But torture, that's a bit excessive.
Right.
At this point, we see Shen Zechuan's deepest feelings, just how dead and empty he feels inside after losing his brother and being the sole survivor of a terrible massacre. He can't live on for the good memories in his past because they feel too far away. He doesn't even feel human anymore, just an empty husk of resentment.
Oh.
But he also feels that Chiye is his opposite. He's like sunlight itself. He's blindingly bright. His brilliance is the only thing that can make him forget his pain for a little while. And knowing that, it casts a little bit of a different light on why someone as reserved and cautious as him ended up sleeping with Chiye, like in those very vulnerable moments after, torturing his, enemy to death.
He wanted to feel the sunlight.
Yeah. So I thought that was like really romantic and angsty.
That's really good.
Killing Chiye was meant to be cathartic revenge, but it ended up putting him further on this path of darkness. That's what his mentor is warning him about. Like, when you keep going down this path, you're not going to be able to come back, and you're not going to live happily ever after. And as your teacher figure, I just want you to be happy and not let this control you. But he is majorly not feeling good at this point. But how far does this attraction towards Chiye extend? Even Shen Zechuan does not seem to know for sure, although he's outwardly planning Chiye's downfall with his allies in the capital. There is also a scene where he's on business at a pleasure house and takes a moment to test himself by looking over some male courtesans, but he finds himself completely unmoved by them. He has a moment where he's like, am I fucking gay? And then goes and looks at some naked men and he's like, nope, that can't be it.
Just him, I guess.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting too.
That is very funny. He has to take a am I gay test.
Yeah, that's him. It's really funny too because how these scenes are written out, it's not spelling out Shen Zechuan's reasoning behind his action or his eternal monologue. You just see him do this. And you kind of have to fill in the blanks yourself on why on earth he would be doing this.
Right.
And so I like that.
Yep, just normal sparring to see here. Boys will be boys, straight boys, that is. Zhou Chengqiu adopted brothers, Ji gang.
Yes, so Chiye and Shen Zechuan, their shizens are adopted brothers.
Okay.
So they actually have a kind of martial connection there. And so Chiye, in order to get Shen Zechuan to stop avoiding him after their intimate night together, gets the shizens together. He's like, hey, I set up a dinner for them to catch up and chat, and so you have to come talk to me, haha. He goes out of his way to arrange that, and at that time, they have a conversation fraught with sexual tension.
Fraught.
Yes. Oh, wait. They get the shizens together. they're eating together, and then he's like, let's go sit at the kids' table. And so they have this conversation fraught with sexual tension beneath the red plum blossom trees, where Xiao Chiye realizes that Shen Zechuan did not lose to lust the way he did. Xiao Chiye knows he's down bad.
Yeah.
Even if he maybe isn't thinking of it in like a deeply romantic soulmate way or anything like that, he is like, I know I'm attracted to him. I know what I want this relationship to be. And he kind of assumed they should be on similar pages about that because of what they shared together. Mm-hmm. But he realized that, like, Shen Zechuan has no interest in even having that much of a relationship. He doesn't trust him at all.
Right.
And so, but he's not deterred by that. Even though he is kind of the one who fell first, he's not embarrassed by that, and it doesn't put him off at all. He rises to the challenge. And he challenges Shen Zechuan's supposed indifference to him, being like, oh, you are so into it, though. Like, there's no way you don't like me.
I mean, he was pretty into it.
He was definitely really into it. And, like, I just gotta, like, truly, I feel like I say this so many times, but their conversations together are always so juicy. They are just, the banter they have, the flirtatiousness they share is so good. So I have to read a little bit of an excerpt from that. Once again, Xiao Chiye was forced to face facts. He was the only one defeated by lust that night. I advised you already. Shen Zechuan raised his hand to pull down a branch and said to Xiao Chiye, his tone almost bewitching, it would be best not to bite this neck. The pleasures of the bedroom, Xiao Chiye challenged with a frivolous smile, are not something I can take sole credit for. So he's like, I can't take all the credit for what we had.
Yeah, you were bouncing on it.
You were fraught with frotting, I suppose. The greatest difference between you and me is desire. You are filled with it. And this is Shen Zechuan talking. The greatest difference between you and me is desire. You are filled with it and trying desperately to hide your wild ambitions. The nape of a neck is a single minor adversity. You've clung to me, wanting to resist it, wanting to defeat it, and in the end you've lost. You see, son. Here, Shen Zechuan plucked a plum blossom, tore the petals, and put one in his mouth. I am not at the mercy of lust. So how do you plan to win against me? Xiao Chiye basically goes on to say, like, I know you were checking out those courtesans at the brothel, taking the gay quiz, and I know that you really enjoyed tumbling between the sheets with me, so don't give me this whole indifference act.
Right.
You putting plum blossoms in your mouth in front of me. You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So he continues and says, you pretend to be a sage, celibate and aloof, but I'm not the one who moaned and panted so delicately that night. He's like, you were the fucking bottom in this situation. God.
Damn.
He's like, you were loud. You cannot take that back. Xiao Chiye pulled Shen Zechuan's knuckles to his lips, pressed against them dangerously, and snickered. I've lost to lust, that's true. But if you're really so steadfast, then why did you feel the need to take that tumble in the sheets with me? Shen Lanzhou, I think you're much more terrified of succumbing to desire than I am.
Ooh.
So he's basically like, you're fucking scared.
Yeah.
You're so scared of how much you like me. So he kind of sees a little bit through him at that point.
Yeah.
And is quite ready to keep pursuing him. But after that conversation, it's like they have that whole conversation, then they have to go back in front of their teachers and act natural.
Yeah, we were sparring. It was real good.
Well, they end up sparring actually, not just with words, because the teacher's like, okay, let's just see you two fight each other because martial arts.
Right.
And so they end up fighting each other, and it's like,
oh, don't attack my neck. My neck's wide open.
Xiao Chiye is definitely flirting with him at the same time as they're fighting. Like they're kicking each other and punching each other, and it's kind of interesting because like they're not holding back at all against each other, but Xiao Chiye is going that extra level of like trying to like feel him up while they're fighting.
Oh my God.
In front of their teachers, just like hiding it just enough. It's ridiculous. It's like, oh my God, you will not stop.
Damn.
You are convinced to just keep going. So that was fun. And the teachers do not catch on at that point.
Teachers are like, who hasn't grabbed another guy's dick in battle by mistake?
It happens all the time.
Not the map.
I'm bringing out the map again. Okay. If you'll open your books, class, there is a new edition on this map versus the first volume, okay? This time we have the Northeast Provisions Trail marked, okay? So that's going to be important moving on. So, like, there's a whole chapter where a lot of information is dumped, and I'm just going to go through the highlights. Okay, in the chapter titled Cartographs, we learn two important pieces of information. the importance of the Northeast Provisions Trail, and the role of the Liu clan in defending the nation. And our protagonists are still unraveling what really happened with Shen Wei's treason and the invasion of the Biancha horsemen. Okay, so here's a few points that are big takeaways. First of all, it wasn't enough for Shen Wei to be a traitor. Someone else inside of the capital must have colluded with the enemy because the Biancha horsemen invaded as if they had a map of the nation.
There was Jing Guanyao handing out little insider information.
Right. And this is something that would be really easy to overlook from a modern perspective because we have Google Maps, we have globes, but historically, maps were not common knowledge, not common information. Like, the common person would not have had, like, you know, a bird's eye view of the whole nation and all of the roads and all of the strategic points. Like, that was really secret, coveted military information. There would maybe be only a few copies of such a map and only a handful of people privy to that kind of information because, and especially, like, an outsider to that nation would, like, think about it. If you're, like, a nomadic tribe on the borders of this nation, like, you may, like, enter that country at the fringes to fight battles and skirmishes and steal things or whatever, but you've never gone further into that nation. How on earth are you going to invade with any idea of what you're going to encounter?
Unless you got a big mountain and some binoculars, you better have a man on the inside.
Right? And so our protagonist can assume safely that there was also someone on the inside colluding with them aside from Shen Wei. Secondly, Shen Wei did not self-immolate. He was set on fire by the embroidered uniform guard and Chiye.
Okay.
Yes, so that was suspicious to begin with. Now we just know that Chiye was involved with that too.
Okay.
The conspiracy continues. The fall of Duanzhou was attributed to Shen Wei's rightful son, Shen Zechuan, abandoning his troops and fleeing. But the real deciding factor was that he and Shen Wei strangled the commander of the Duanzhou garrison troops, Tan Tai Long, who was Tan Tai Hu's older brother. Tan Tai Hu is a character associated with Xiao Chiye in the Imperial army who really hated Shen Zechuan in the previous volume, but he does not know the truth about his brother's death. So that's kind of an important factor as well. Like, there's just so many little details about how things really went down and the extent of what Shen Wei did and why that just is not the common narrative. Fourthly, while we may have previously assumed that the Dowager silenced her own pawn, Shen Wei, Xiao Chiye and Shen Zechuan agree that the cost of his death wouldn't have been worthwhile to the Dowager, so someone else was behind Shen Wei's death, his self-immolation. So someone was working with Chiye and the embroidered guards to kill him, get rid of him during this plot. And so, like, again, there's, like, mystery figures involved here. It's bigger than all of the characters we know at present. And none of this information is going to be, like, immediately relevant to us, but it's all just kind of floating in the background of this greater mystery. So Shen Zechuan proposes the existence of a mastermind who not only orchestrated the Biancha invasion 5 years ago, but continues to manipulate the capital behind the scenes even now.
Ni Huai Song.
Yes, exactly. There was a Ni Huai Song in our midst. And that's something that you can kind of keep in mind as we go through these various situations that happen in the capital. Like, events are being triggered, situations are being caused, various people, like, move up in the ranks, various people get put down or, you know, taken out. And every time you think you know who is causing a situation or behind a situation, there's, like, another level even behind that.
Right.
And hopefully our protagonists will get to the bottom of it eventually. They're playing this kind of game of chess with one another and figuring out who all the players are. Yes, all that information, but let's move on. Alliance? Truce? Bros? We'll find out. Xiao Chiye has been constantly appealing to Shen Zechuan that they should work together for mutual gain, and they finally managed to agree on a couple points. Both of them want to cause division among the 8 great clans of the capital, a group of noble families who have taken turns consolidating power in the court over generations of emperors. Shen Zechuan is particularly interested in bringing over to his side the renowned but elusive scholar from the Yao clan, Yao Wenyu. Both of them also want to disrupt the impending marriage between Third Lady Hua, the Dowager's niece, and Old Marshal Qi, the philanderous murdering father of the female general Marshal Chiye. Okay? So they're like, on these 2 points, like we both want the same goals. So maybe we could collaborate a little there. They won't be able to stop the marriage altogether, but they can use Chi Juyin's, like the daughters, they can use Marshal Chiye's disapproval to keep them from consummating the marriage and creating an heir. What's also interesting about that is that Marshal Chiye and Third Lady Hua have kind of a little bit of a lesbian vibe going on, but it's really interesting because Third Lady Hua is technically about to marry her dad. So all sorts of crazy things happening over there. But yeah, they don't want that to happen because then the dowager has her hands in that whole family and their military. However, they cannot have any of these serious discussions without Xiao Chiye trying to cuddle up to him and touch him in all sorts of manners.
Nice.
During which Shen Zechuan wriggles out of that like a grumpy house cat. Even so, communications break down completely when they start passionately making out instead. Like, I need you to understand, they have so many scenes where they are like completely discussing serious business and it's like life or death on the line, they're scheming, and then Xiao Chiye is like, okay, time to kiss, and he's like, and they still somehow get in these hot and heavy situations. Like, they just cannot resist each other. They would have gone even further during the scene if one of Xiao Chiye's guards, Ding Tao, didn't fall off the roof when he heard them making out.
Oh.
And it's every so often there's just a gag where it like cuts to these guys who are always hanging out on the roof, guarding shit. And Ding Tao is the youngest one, and he's kind of silly, always writing things down in his notebook, getting in trouble. And so he hears them making out, is so surprised, falls off the roof into the snow, and then immediately runs for his life because like, Xiao Chiye is gonna be so fucking mad at me. Like, I'm leaving home. I cannot come back. He's going to kill me. For interrupting their makeout, and he's right. Anyways, after all that, it seems that Shen Zechuan has no problem acting against Xiao Chiye and creating trouble for him, because at a royal banquet, a eunuch attempts to assassinate the emperor, kind of a big deal, and Shen Zechuan is conveniently there to kill the assassin. Moreover, the person in charge of security for that banquet is none other than Xiao Chiye. So that paved the way for Shen Zechuan to be promoted ahead of schedule and drove a rift between the emperor and Xiao Chiye. Right? So now emperor is starting to suspect that Xiao Chiye maybe isn't as loyal as he assumed, and he's also, Shen Zechuan is getting promoted. And this kickstarts a whole huge thing, okay? The assassination attempt on the emperor is going to be most of the book right here. Shen Zechuan is just tricky. Even when it seems like he's working with Xiao Chiye, it also seems like he's working against him. So as a reader, you're trying to figure out how much is he actually on Xiao Chiye's side? How much is he actually willing to go against him? Does it just look like he's, taking him out, or is Xiao Chiye going to get out of the situation just fine? And did Shen Zechuan anticipate that as well? We'll find out. Next slide. We have a flowchart coming. This flowchart covers most of the important relationships involving the assassination attempt, as well as the resulting investigation into an embezzlement case. There's also a makeout scene in between, and that's kind of my jingle. Pay attention. We will get through this. So I will read through the summary of the plot, and hopefully the flowchart will help keep things clear. The Vice Minister of the Court of Judicial Review, Wei Huaxing, and Fu Linye, the Right Censor-in-Chief of the Chief Surveillance Bureau, both submit memorials to the Emperor pinning the assassination attempt on Xiao Chiye, using falsified evidence indicating that Yuan Liu, who was in the Imperial Army, was closely acquainted with Xiao Chiye and exchanged bribes for promotion. This association between Xiao Chiye and Yuan Liu is important because Yuan Liu was lovers with Fu Ling, who was the maid in the palace who assigned the eunuch to the emperor for this banquet. Okay. And that eunuch ended up trying to kill the emperor with a pair of chopsticks. Mm-hmm. So, because of that indirect association, Xiao Chiye is being implicated. However, he didn't actually have a particular relationship with this soldier in the Imperial Army. It's just kind of been trumped up because Wei Huaxing and Fu Linye have it out for him. Xiao Chiye is stripped of his authority and under house arrest, with the embroidered guard temporarily taking over his duties. Then we learned that these officials were backed by none other than Shen Zechuan, who was acting under the advice and influence of Shen Zechuan. So these two officials who came forth with the charges against Xiao Chiye were backed by this other guy who's been working with Shen Zechuan this whole time.
Okay.
So it seems like Shen Zechuan is actively trying to take out Xiao Chiye, and that's what he's telling Shen Zechuan as well. He's saying, we have mutual goals, take out Xiao Chiye. There's also a scene where Shui Xiuzhou appears to confront Shen Zechuan because Han Cheng, this other guy that they're working with, was the one who was supposed to protect the emperor and get the promotion. But Shen Zechuan acted quicker and got it instead. So Shen Zechuan kind of did a little bit of a backstabbing gesture, but not enough to get him kicked out of the evil scheming group.
Right.
But that was a really interesting scene because it's like, whoa, hold on. Shui Xiuzhou, we haven't actually interacted with him a lot. He's like kind of an unknown character to us. He's just another guy in court. But it's interesting to see that he is involved in this side of the plotting, and it's like, what's his relationship with Shen Zechuan? We'll learn a little bit more about him later, but that was just kind of a very small scene in the middle of all this. It's easily lost in the shuffle, but he becomes a much more important character later on.
Okay.
So Shui Xiuzhou is clearly in on this assassination attempt to inadvertently take out Xiao Chiye as well, but Shen Zechuan doesn't seem to know much about him. So that's also interesting. So how much he's involved, up in the air. We'll circle back to him. Xiao Chiye getting attacked in court. His arrogant and emotional defense of himself in the emperor's court was little more than an act. Being framed did not come as a surprise to Xiao Chiye, and he's ready to make his next move as his enemies on court launch an audit of the Imperial army as a part of their investigation. And who should be tasked to brave the perils of auditing Xiao Chiye's residence but Shen Zechuan? Naturally, he has to search the bedroom too. So here we go to the makeout scene, right? So Shen Zechuan is working with Fu Linye. Fu Linye put the dirty task of having to personally interact with an angry Xiao Chiye on Shen Zechuan, who is more than happy to take on this task and personally goes to his residence with another auditor to search through his files and see if they can dig up anything. Xiao Chiye and Shen Zechuan hold a conversation in Xiao Chiye's bedroom, separated by a decorative screen. Their silhouettes faintly outlined to each other, and it's very sensual at this point. As he speaks, Xiao Chiye runs his fingertips over Shen Zechuan's outlined body on the screen. His jaw, his neck, his chest. And
that's so sexy.
Right? This
God.
is illustrated too. This is an illustrated page.
I love this.
Right? It's just crazy to me how deeply Xiao Chiye desires him.
Mm-hmm. He's lusting over his shadow.
Right? He's down so bad. I'm so into it. And he promises Shen Zechuan to give him a jade earring while imagining how it would look against his pale skin during their more intimate encounters.
I know this earring.
You sure do. Xiao Chiye, he's fixated on the earring for sure. He really wants to mark him in a possessive sort of way.
This is hot. This is very hot.
Right? Yeah, so Xiao Chiye is like, I'm gonna give you an earring, by the way. And Shen Zechuan is literally looking through his tax records, being like, I am actively trying to destroy you. Hello? Oh, this is so good though, because it's not just Xiao Chiye. He's so overt with his desires. In a lesser yaoi, Shen Zechuan would be not interested at all, okay? And there would be a whole coercion thing, and it would be messy.
Yeah.
But although it's hard to pin down Shen Zechuan's true feelings, this is where you start to see how seductive of a person he is. It's just so good, okay?
Okay.
Shen Zechuan remains coy this whole time, neither denying him nor falling into his hands. But in between flirty banter, advises him on his current situation. So he's like, more importantly, this tax thing. But suddenly they're interrupted by Shen Zechuan's coworker, the long-suffering auditor Yu Xiaozai, who knocks on the door. Xiao Chiye uses this compromising moment to pull Shen Zechuan into his inner chambers, press him against the wall, and lift his legs around his waist. He refuses to let him go, even though they're moments away from getting caught, making a single demand. Can you guess what it is?
Kiss me.
Worse. Wear the earring.
Oh my god!
He's like, wear this hypothetical earring that I'm going to give you.
Oh my god.
Or be discovered in this compromising position. To quote him directly, he says, wear it for my eyes. fucking believe this? Doki Doki? Is
He's
this
down bad.
right? Like, what does that even mean? That's so hot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god. But Shen Zechuan still doesn't budge, forcing them to hide under the bed together at the last moment, with Xiao on top of him, kissing him nearly to the point of asphyxiation.
Oh my god.
Like they are crammed under there, and of course,
might as well kiss a
bit, while poor Yu Xiaozai is wandering around being like, where could Shen Zechuan be? My coworker, I need him. And like, this is where, like, this could either be like a completely normal is generous, but like a completely normal scene, but like it is claustrophobic, okay? Like, Shen Zechuan like almost passes out from like not being able to breathe. But I think it's meant in kind of a kinky way because they get into like freaky stuff later on, just a little bit. So I don't really know if I'm reading into that. Like, is this supposed to be like added sexiness or is he just suffering? I can't tell. But anyways, good for him.
So is it like the beginnings of like a choking kink or like asphyxiation?
I don't like. It's kind of a one-off thing.
Okay.
You know. So that's the thing. Like, they at various points throughout the story, they do things that are just like slightly like, oh, that was a bit specific. But it's never consistent enough where I'm like, that's their thing.
Okay.
So I kind of love that for them. They're
Yeah.
just so into each other. But I wasn't sure if this was one of those moments or if like it was just like we're literally just under the bed and he cannot resist him.
Yeah.
Not that he would really be keen on it in this situation. Regardless. But anyways, they kiss. Yu Xiaozai leaves. Shen Zechuan gets back to business and leaves without finding anything damning. And the plot moves on. So the investigation into Xiao Chiye's and the Imperial Army's finances revealed nothing connected to the assassination attempt. Fu Linye is determined to bring down Xiao Chiye even through unrelated charges. He discovers one small discrepancy. Back when Xiao Chiye first took over the Imperial Army, the Ministry of Works owed the army a sizable sum for manual labor in the capital. Because they didn't have the funds on hand, Xiao Chiye was given a batch of 660 bolts of silk instead, which he then exchanged for a silver per market value. However, the silk was recorded as low grade by the Ministry of Revenue when it was transferred to Xiao Chiye, but in the treasury records it was recorded as a batch of high grade silks. Essentially, the value of the silk was fudged on the official record, creating an excess value of 4,000 taels, which just disappeared into Xiao Chiye's pockets. Like, this is some like in-depth like tax fraud shit.
Yeah.
But the debt was settled by Wang Shen, not Wang Shen of Modazushi, but just a guy named Wang Shen.
Okay.
So, like, the debt was settled by Wang Shen, secretary for the Ministry of Revenue. So outwardly, he is also guilty of colluding with Xiao Chiye for this deal. But here's what's more important to note. Shui Xiuzhou, who was at that time the chief supervising secretary of the Ministry of Revenue, was actually responsible for mediating the solution, which is now being used against Xiao Chiye. So Xiao Chiye was harassing Wang Shen for like, give me this money, and he's like, we don't have the money. Shui Xiuzhou, his supervisor, and was like, hey, give him some silk, that'll take care of it because we don't have the cash on hand right now. So he is ultimately responsible for putting, like, just having this thing that didn't immediately cause a problem, but is now being used against Xiao Chiye. So it's kind of interesting being like, did he do this on purpose to have something that he could use against Xiao Chiye in the future? Or was this just kind of an under-the-table thing that would have meant nothing, but kind of blew up later on? Don't really know. He's just involved. So moving on. So let's get into Shui Xiuzhou's backstory. His reputation is that of an intelligent, upright, and diligent minister who is good at befriending others. He also has an interesting background. He was born to a noble family, but was only the son of a concubine, and therefore his education was neglected in his early life. He was eventually sent to school and showed signs of being a prodigy, but due to unfortunate timing alone, he was outshone by Yao Wenyu, who would eventually be known as the scholar of his generation. You know, I mentioned him earlier. He is this elusive scholar that Shen Zechuan is interested in bringing over to his side. However, Shui Xiuzhou tried to become a disciple of Hai Liangyi, who is another court official who's currently probably he's like the number one guy, like kind of like you could imagine him as the kind of right-hand man advisor to the emperor. He is just totally upright, like completely flawlessly correct. He's not corrupt at all. He's like one of the few good men left in the capital. And so he's on the flowchart as well. So he tried to become a disciple of Hai Liangyi, who rejected him for Yao Wenyu instead. However, he remained very filial and diligent towards Hai Liangyi over the years, and Hai Liangyi does seem to value his merits, even though he didn't take him on as a disciple. So that was interesting that he kind of had this sort of failed relationship with him, but still seemed really good and nice, didn't hold a grudge against it or anything. If he hadn't been too young and unknown at the time of the Bianxia invasion, Shen Zechuan would have even suspected that he was involved back then as well. So at this time, he is pretty powerful up there figure, but kind of flying under the radar and seems really smart. Like, Shen Zechuan would have suspected him of being a sort of mastermind in the capital if he just hadn't been too young at the time of the Bianxia invasion. So there's definitely some interesting stuff going on with him. So back to the silk situation. The silk situation itself actually isn't a big deal. It's not really above boards, but it's not something that would have ordinarily gotten Xiao Chiye more than a slap on the wrist if it ever came to light, which was unlikely to begin with. But now that he's being accused of treason and assassination, everything is being cast in a much more sinister light. Thankfully, Hai Liangyi and his co-worker Kong Chu rightfully detect Fu Linyi's urgency to put down Xiao Chiye and set aside the case to focus on the assassination. They're like, wait a second, you're bringing up the silk thing. That has nothing to do with the assassination. You're clearly way too eager to get this guy in trouble. So let's focus. So that was the whole silk detour. While this is happening, Shen Zechuan and Xiao Chiye still continue to meet in private. Although Shen Zechuan is holding Xiao Chiye at an arm's length now, Xiao Chiye has fully accepted his own desire and is constantly making suggestive passes at Shen Zechuan, touching him under any pretense and making it clear to him that he wants to be on the same side. Shen Zechuan has an understanding of Xiao Chiye's character, but suspects that he has a history of romantic dalliances and is not himself a trusting person.
Not romantic dalliances.
Right? He's like, I don't know, I feel like you've been with a lot of bitches. Because he's also, Xiao Chiye has this kind of, it's not fully a playboy persona, but he's been fooling around in the capital, just kind of being a guy.
Yeah.
And so Shen Zechuan, not being a trusting person himself, has no reason to think that he's capable of any kind of loyalty. So he doesn't see Xiao Chiye as having anything more than lust for him. But Xiao Chiye is expressing more and more care for Shen Zechuan's person, his health, whether he's warm or eating enough, and tries to combine their goals and work together, such as with the public ditch situation, which we will get into shortly. Although Shen Zechuan does not seem to be accepting his advances, in actuality, a large part of that is him being coy. And that's what's so delicious about their interactions. Shen Zechuan is truly a seductive person, and Xiao Chiye knows full well that he's being teased and frustrated by Shen Zechuan's crafted play at innocence, with just a subtle look in his eyes goading him on. He's learning more about Shen Zechuan's small taste and preferences for food and drink, starting to sense the depth of his true feelings behind his endless facade. And the next time they are intimate together already shows a world of difference.
He cares.
Yeah, we're starting to see the relationship deepen a little bit. So what happens is Shen Zechuan is feverish and tired and ends up falling asleep at the table while they're meeting privately, and Xiao Chiye gently takes him to bed and undresses him, only to end up just giving him medicine and spooning him while he pretends to sleep. Like, it was a situation where Shen Zechuan expected Xiao Chiye to, like, be like, okay, time to bang.
Yeah.
But he actually just takes care of him instead.
Aww.
However, at that point, it's Shen Zechuan who, instead of sleeping, makes a point of acknowledging Xiao Chiye's raging boner and provokes him to do something with it.
Oh.
So, like, even though Shen Zechuan is
not so innocent,
not feeling too good, and Xiao Chiye gives him a pass, he's like, not gonna do anything to you, you're not feeling well, it's fine. He's the one who's like, nah, we should do something.
Oh my gosh.
So they end up passionately making out, and then the passionate makeout turns into tender, intimate kisses instead. Like, it is described in a much more romantic way than their first wild
oh my gosh
bout
they're
together.
loving on each other.
They're loving on each other, and Shen Zechuan actually ends up falling asleep in his arms.
Oh.
With Xiao Chiye's hair curled around his fingers.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And, like, while he's sleeping, Xiao even kisses his forehead and the bridge of his nose.
Oh my gosh, that's really sweet.
I know.
Did they do anything about his boner?
I can't remember, actually. I was too,
It's like, we should do something about that boner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Riles him up even more.
Riles him up, falls asleep. Classic Shen Zechuan. So in this case, like, there's definitely, like, clothes coming off, kissing definitely happening.
There was an ambiguous nut.
There was an ambiguous nut.
Schrodinger's nut.
Yeah. So I would love to hear what people think on whether or not that happened then. On the page, there's a beautiful quote. In all the world, the only one who understood Chie's suffering without any words was Shen Zechuan. This was something both had known with certainty since their first kiss. After that first night of stolen pleasure, they had tacitly begun to shed their shells and reveal their true selves. The chasm of the past had become a puddle. All it took was a single leap or a helping hand to reach the other side where they could merge into one. That's very romantic.
That's very romantic.
Right? And I love that even though they started out with a lot of extreme passion and lust for each other, that this is a story about them truly getting to know each other and trust each other and develop a really deep, trusting connection. And that happens much more slowly, so you kind of get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
While they're warming up to each other, they're also still very heated. Okay, so let's move on. More plot stuff. But first I must explain the capital's drainage infrastructure before they can fall in love further.
Oh joy!
Read the text overlaid in the background.
They fuck in a tent.
I forgot I put that there. It's like subliminal messaging. Jingle, jingle! We're gonna get deep into the ditches for this one. Literally. A little closer to home, there is a problem with the capital city's drainage infrastructure. Households are encroaching on the public ditches to expand their property, and many of the ditches are poorly managed and clogged as well, all leading to severe flooding in certain residential districts every spring. The standing water from these floods spreads disease and can potentially result in plague. Moreover, this type of encroachment and unlawful expansion of private property has resulted in expanded houses being crammed roof to roof, which could have disastrous consequences in the event of a fire. However, the problem has been ongoing for years and nobody cares because the neighborhoods affected are just the slums. Shen Zechuan cares a little bit though because he lives in one of these poor neighborhoods and his courtyard is currently flooding. Before he can do anything about the public ditches, however, disaster strikes. After a night of heavy rain, Shi Huangshuan's #1 hangout spot, the pleasure house Ohua Pavilion, collapses suddenly with him in it.
Oh.
And the emperor.
Oh.
The emperor went out on a little late night cruise of the brothels. I don't know how he got out of the palace without anyone seeing him, but he's out there having some fun and ends up in this collapsed brothel. Not only that, but if the public ditches aren't cleared immediately, this heavy rain will cause severe flooding that Shen Zechuan anticipated. Hai Liangyi takes emergency action to provide flood relief and rescue the emperor, and in the chaos, Chiye does pull the emperor out of the wreckage. But that is far from the end of the situation because we still have flooding and other disasters currently midway that our protagonists have to deal with. So let's move on. Okay, I can explain. Hold on. It's still raining, and our protagonists are out there in the rain. As commanders of the Imperial Army and embroidered uniform guard, Chiye and Shen Zechuan are on the ground attempting to avert greater disaster by clearing the ditches and tearing down the encroaching houses and so on. For households to cooperate, however, the treasury needs to subsidize their losses. But the treasury is in a tight budget for the spring because it needs to reserve money for the prefectures affected by poor harvests in the previous year. The ability to buy seeds will determine whether entire parts of the country starve in the upcoming year or not. Shen Zechuan is able to do the mental math on the entire nation's tax intake, tax exemptions, harvest yield, and so on to find a way to save money in one area and redirect the funds to house demolition subsidies in the capital. So, like, while the rain is currently coming down, they're like, how are we going to start fixing this tonight and like get the money from the treasury in order to get people to cooperate with us tearing down their houses to prevent greater disasters. Like, and Shen Zechuan is just, this is how we're going to do it. Like, mad projections happening. This is what he comes up with. Suzhou, which is in Zhongbo, has grain and seeds that other regions like Dunzhou, need. Zhizhou suffered from heavy snowfall that crushed many houses during the winter. Xiao Chiye's brother, Xiao Jimei, set aside 40,000 taels from Li Bei's military budget to provide relief to Shizhou. So Shizhou can repay that favor now by discounting its grain sales to Dunzhou by the same amount. The treasury can therefore allocate less funds to both regions and put that money towards the house demolition subsidies. The house demolition subsidies in the capital. The big takeaway is that this is the level at which Shen Zechuan operates, and this is how he can make big changes possible. Grain is money. Grain is the difference between life and death. Grain moves your armies and secures the loyalties of your people. Shen Zechuan is even thinking further ahead. Even though the demolished houses in the capital will be subsidized now, the households that illegally appropriated the public ditches still have to serve some kind of punishment. So it's like, hey, for you to cooperate, we understand this is a bummer. Here's some money to rebuild. You also broke the law, so you still have to be punished as well. Stick and carrot. So, like, one of these kinds of publish could be like manual labor, community service, and so on. Xiao Chiye will owe Shizhou a favor in return for their help in this instance. So he, in turn, can provide the manpower needed for Shizhou to rebuild its city by sending laborers from the capital, the people tasked with community service. So, again, Shizhou, doing the capital solid by discounting its grain for other regions, so the capital can have its money for this disaster. Then, when it needs its laborers to rebuild its city, Xiao Chiye can do them a solid, return this favor, and at that point, Shizhou and Li Bei will have developed a strong relationship of mutual assistance. There's been several backs and forths between them through this whole projection that Shen Zechuan has, and that is really good for Xiao Chiye's family because Shizhou is close to the Northeast Provisions Trail, a crucial supply route for the Li Bei armored cavalry. So it's especially important for Xiao Chiye to get his foot in the door there to keep an eye on things for his family. In this whole situation, Shen Zechuan has not only found an immediate solution for their current problem, but also arranged things so that several steps down the line, Xiao Chiye will have developed a relationship, a political alliance that benefits him personally and his family. So that's really telling because we've seen Shen Zechuan collaborating with other people in the capital supposedly to take down Xiao Chiye, and Xiao Chiye is not being taken down by these actions. So he's playing both sides here, but it does seem like he has Xiao Chiye's best interests in mind for the long term.
Right.
It's kind of romantic.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like, oh, you revealed that you're actually thinking of him. It's like, I don't know, his love language is political machinations for your benefit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's move on to juicier things.
Tortured by voices, cursed by God, small waist, criminal record, died once, diagnosis, baby girl.
Yeah, we're going to diagnose Shen Zechuan with baby girl. It's been mentioned before that Shen Zechuan has a very delicate, frail body. He certainly does not have the physique of someone who practices martial arts. Yet we know he has been trained in G-style boxing for many years.
Is this the book with the bone shrinking juice? Or is that Thousand Autumns?
That was Thousand Autumns, but this is it's great that you bring that up because we have similar sort of thing going on here with magical medicine, right?
Yeah. Okay.
The secret behind the disconnect between his body and his martial arts is that Shen Zechuan has been taking a medicine that feigns illness and conceals his true strength.
Right.
Although it results in harmful side effects over time, it was worth it for him to deceive everyone around him and for Chiye to let his guard down. Now that he's killed Chiye, he has stopped taking the medicine. But between the long-term side effects and his tortured past, Shen Zechuan does not have the superhuman constitution that Xiao Chiye has. Like, you could put Xiao Chiye out in the rain and he can survive. No problem. He's super strong. He's like Edward Cullen. He's fine. But Shen Zechuan will absolutely catch a cold if he's left out in the rain too long. That is the difference between them. And this will become delightfully relevant now that he's been stuck in the pouring rain all night.
Oh no.
We love an ailing boy. Okay, so next slide, please.
Xiao Chiye taking good care of his Lanzhou so he stays warm and well. Shen Zechuan getting the fucking plague. Oh.
Right. So, the actual work of supervising the ditch clearing is thankless, miserable work. Shen Zechuan is still ailing and is nearly at the point of collapse in the pouring rain when suddenly a heavy coat is draped over his head. Xiao Chiye pushes a warm food box into his hands without a single word, cups his face between his hands, and kisses Shen Zechuan hard. Then he rubs Shen Zechuan's cheeks vigorously as if he has cuteness aggression and takes off into the rain again. The meal is still warm even on this freezing night because he had run all the way to reach him. Isn't that just so sweet? Isn't that
so
something that
romantic.
Moran would do for Chuan?
Yeah, it made me think of that too.
It's very domestic. It's like, even though Xiao is also dealing with this situation, he still stops and be like, I bet he hasn't fucking eaten yet. I bet he's cold and wet right now. And like runs through the ring to go take care of him before running back. And just him not even saying anything is just so cute.
It's so sweet.
And even more than the kiss, just him like rubbing his cheeks. It's like he likes him so much.
Yeah.
He can't help it. It's like way more than lust at this point.
Yeah.
And even Shen Zechuan, after he leaves, nuzzles his nose into the warmth and scent left in Xiao Chiye's coat.
Okay, that's gay.
Not only is he nuzzling his coat, but he's also still, like, sniffing the handkerchief that he kept from Xiao Chiye. Like, boy is in love
He's
with
like,
his scent.
you're so into me. You just are a man of lust, and I would...
Literally. It's like, I may have imprinted on your scent, but that means nothing to me. I can resist it, it's fine. The situation, however, continues to worsen. The collapse of Ohua Pavilion is absolutely suspicious. It's the only building to collapse in the flooding. Moreover, how did the emperor sneak out of the palace without being seen? And who helped him? Despite being rescued, the emperor is injured and even starts developing signs of an infectious disease. The symptoms include red rashes, high fever, and vomiting.
Ew.
Yeah. Of course, not only the emperor is infected, the dirty floodwaters have spread the epidemic through the displaced population, especially those sheltering at the Temple of Guilt. Xiao Chiye immediately mobilizes the Imperial army to procure medicinal herbs from all the available apothecaries and to quarantine the sick among the evacuees.
This is now the second Danmei with Ebola.
Yes! Yes!
Get it?
I know!
No, you know, it was the first one.
Case file!
It's not actually Ebola, though. This is
No,
this is like Ebola.
Look, you'll never guess what fucking happens in Stars of Chaos.
Oh, no.
Another plague. We're going to all the Danmei.
We're in the Ebola era.
We're in the plague era of Danmei right now, okay? There's just more and more plague to be seen.
Damn.
Yeah, so, the plague. As soon as the word plague drops, no court official wants to be anywhere near the relief work. It falls on Shen Zechuan to handle much of the logistics in their stead, putting his frail body at great risk.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah, let the sick and ailing twink take care of it. He'll be fine. Shen Zechuan ensures the safety of his masters by sending them away from the Temple of Guilt, but Jigong is frantic with worry for him and tries to go to him. Xiao Chiye is also busy managing the Imperial Army's work on disaster relief and searches him out again as soon as possible. So Xiao Chiye, like, runs to him as soon as he hears about the plague because he knows that Shen Zechuan was already sick before...
My sickly wife. He's not going to handle the plague
Right?
well.
Well, the first thing he thinks is like, oh my god, he was already sick with the plague. Like,
Oh, yeah,
he
makes sense.
like has to like run to make sure that he doesn't have the symptoms of the plague, that he just had a regular cold before all of this dropped. As an aside, also, like, because Xiao Chiye is like talking to doctors and stuff, and he kind of covers up the fact that Shen Zechuan was sick at all before this plague dropped because the emperor is sick with the plague. So whoever got the plague first is gonna be like fucking dead. It's like, you got the emperor sick, you fucking idiot.
Yeah.
So he's also like,
He's not patient zero.
He's not patient. Yes, exactly. So that was kind of a funny aside going on in the middle of all this.
Sick? He's never been sick.
No, he's fine. He's just caught it maybe after everyone else did. Yeah. Yes. So he goes to Shen Zechuan and they fall asleep together in pure exhaustion after Xiao Chiye confirms that he doesn't have the symptoms. But by morning, Shen Zechuan developed a raging fever and contracted the plague after all.
By morning, he developed a raging, fever.
Aww. You're so fucking funny. How could you?
Shit.
Yeah, that's what Xiao Chiye is thinking. It's so perilous, but also this is like my favorite part because it's like, oh no, you're forced to be vulnerable. Someone has to take care of you. How terrible is that? Hope you don't develop feelings over this.
Oh my god.
Okay, so here we go. Over the following days, Xiao Chiye is run ragged between his duties and tenderly taking care of Shen Zechuan every night. He holds him in his arms like a child, rocking him gently and soothing him with soft-spoken words. He can't even sleep himself, fearing that every breath Shen Zechuan draws may be his last. Every time Shen Zechuan starts slipping into a comatose state, he's able to coax him back by murmuring, "Where is Lanzhou?" Just imagine him like that for a second, like holding his arms and keeping him like, don't go towards the light.
Yeah.
Like, Lanzhou, where's Lanzhou? Like calling him intimately by his first name.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, that that's going to be like a little bit of a reoccurring thing between them, this kind of intimacy with their first names, especially because they're kind of living these double lives of like, we're pretending to be enemies and we're actually secretly not enemies.
Yeah.
And frequently experiencing near-death situations and kind of being called back from death time and time again by this important person. So this is where it all begins, baby.
Does this become like a thing in like the Hunger Games where they say like real or not real?
Kind of.
Or like in The Fault of Our Stars,
Okay.
where it's like okay, like is
A little bit.
Where's Lanzhou are okay?
A little bit.
A
little bit.
As much as we joke about that, though, I really love
I do
that
love
because it's like a deeply intimate, serious thing between
Yeah.
people.
Especially because I think Shen Zechuan has, you know, a little bit of a crisis about like, who am I? Like, am I a dark, terrible person? Like, can I like get myself out of this filth, this existence that has been allotted to me?
Yeah.
And he really does need someone to believe in him and love him. And so Chiye being this person for him is like very deep and very intimate. And like them having this connection where it's like I know you, I see you, I'm there for you. Like I will always like bring you back to me. That's incredibly significant.
I love that. That's so beautiful. It's almost kind of something that like Moran and Shuaning are dealing with right now in the current volume.
Yes, a bit like that for sure. Like Shen Zechuan had darkness hours emotionally. Now he's physically ailing. He is a very tenacious, tough person, but of course he's also repressing a lot of vulnerability.
And he's the bottom.
So it's a tough world. Tough world for Shen Zechuan, really. But he's going to learn that maybe there's someone he can trust to not screw him over.
Aww.
In this defenseless, vulnerable state, Shen Zechuan is finally unable to ignore his true feelings. To him, Chiye is like temptation itself, and he can no longer resist him. He's already fallen into his hands, having no other choice than to rely on him.
Aww.
But back to the plot. There is a lot of bouncing back and forth, because there's a lot of things happening at the same time. And I even, reorder things chronologically to kind of keep plot lines together, but this is truly like a back and forth sort of situation. So meanwhile, the Emperor. Not only is the Emperor's little joyride suspicious, but the plague itself is also very convenient in timing. There are records of this type of sickness before from years ago in another region, but it seemed to originate from a poorly managed burial ground transmitted to flies to a food stall from which the plague spread. But even though the sewage water and evacuation can spread this disease quickly now that it's started, there shouldn't be any dead bodies contaminating the city in the same way. So this is clearly like an artificially planted disease, if you think about it.
Yeah.
The Dowager is likely not behind it this time because she has just started to get the vulnerable emperor to respect her as his mother. So this time it's the work of someone who wants Li Jiangheng dead. Additionally, the only one who could convince the emperor to engage in this risky behavior so soon after his assassination attempt would be his concubine Muru. But she should want him alive more than anybody. Her entire livelihood depends on his whim.
Yeah.
So even though she's involved, she's not necessarily the mastermind behind this. Back to Shen Zechuan. His fever finally breaks and he awakens on the path to recovery. The moment Chiye hears the news, he rushes to his side, and the only thing Shen Zechuan wants is to stroke his face and look into his eyes until Chiye physically covers his gaze and accuses him of trying to tempt him.
Aww.
Shen Zechuan openly initiated some affection.
Yeah.
Like out of pure relief and gratitude.
That's really sweet.
And Chiye is like, stop trying to seduce me. Don't look at me with those eyes. What I also love at this point, everyone in their confidence, all their trusted subordinates that they have at their disposal, they're all well aware of their relationship and have to pretend to ignore it at all times.
Right.
Because of their PDA. So they're in the tent at this point. They sleep together under Chiye's coat that night, and Shen Zechuan's arm even falls asleep while Chiye snuggles him, but he doesn't move.
Aww.
So cute.
That's really cute.
And then in the morning, they start discussing business again as soon as they wake together, but it quickly devolves into pleasure when Shen Zechuan calls Chiye by his first name. So it's like, they had the whole thing with Chiye calling Shen Zechuan by his first name while he was ill, and now he's returning that level of intimacy towards him.
Okay.
From this moment on, we see a new side of Shen Zechuan, one that still plays coy but now blatantly seduces Xiao Chiye, and responds encouragingly in equal measure to his flirtations, returning them instead of staying out of reach. Although they have barely enough privacy in a tent surrounded by guards, they secretly engage in a single round of lovemaking, hardly enough to satisfy the raging desires within them.
Wow.
Yup.
In a tent, you say?
In a tent, yes.
Wow.
Wow, how novel. It doesn't even really go into it that as much this time, but you can just tell that there's already been a huge shift in their relationship since the first time. And this also makes me think that, like, their previous little makeout didn't go that far, because I feel like it's like the first time was like, you know, crazy one night stand, and now it's like, oh, they've established a new boundary in their relationship. So
was Shen Zechuan in this one as into it as the first time?
Even more so, I would say. Like, I mean, the first time was just like, we did it, now I'm never going to acknowledge that this happened again, sort of thing.
But this one had some feelings.
Oh yeah, this one was much more intimate and romantic and, like, passionate, but not, like, wildly reckless, you know?
Aww.
Yeah. It's very tender.
Important themes. What does it mean to be emperor? Does bloodline mean anything at all? Zhongbo. Can you soft launch being gay by dating a masked lesbian? What's the point of it all?
Okay. So I'm going to touch upon a lot of small points here.
I'm so intrigued about the masked lesbian.
This is great.
That's so funny.
This is a real scene that happens. Okay. So after the assassination attempt, after the whole trapped in a brothel while it's flooding situation, the Emperor Li Jiangheng feels the powerlessness of his position as an emperor. There seems to be this looming shadow over him, as if he himself is only a chess piece with the right bloodline and the right surname to be used by the court. What would happen to him if there was another heir, someone else with the surname Li who would be eligible for the throne? But such a person does not exist. If there was, however, it would change everything. This is something to think about as we move forward. So after this whole situation blows over, Emperor recovers from his sickness, and we're introduced to some information that will become more and more relevant. The frontier prefecture of Zhongbo, previously under the Shen clan's jurisdiction, is crucially understaffed in its administrative government and is lacking in qualified, competent officials to help manage natural disasters. So the court will soon be seeking candidates from the central administration to take over the area. But of course, it's essentially a tough and thankless job in the middle of nowhere. After the Biancha massacre, the common folk mostly fled, creating more economic disparity and a bandit problem for those who remain. So we're just kind of introduced out of the blue this information about this one region. It's like, hey, it's not doing so good. We need to kind of beef up the government there, send some people over. Who are we going to choose? We don't know yet. But that will definitely be a theme in the next volume for sure. We're just getting kind of teased about it now. Meanwhile, Xiao Chiye's elder brother, Xiao Jiming, tactfully helped his brother in the emperor's court during this whole ordeal, but afterwards he suspects that someone has caught Xiao Chiye's eye, and so he encourages his brother to get married to any girl he likes. He will have his family's full support and assistance if need be, just as long as someone's there to take care of him. Xiao Chiye tries to deny that he's interested in someone, but then takes the opportunity to test the limits of his brother's support by asking if he'd accept someone like Marshal Qi, for example, notable masked lesbian. Xiao Jiming is understandably gobsmacked, but nevertheless attests that even someone like Marshal Qi would be fine as long as she didn't hack him to death first.
That is funny. That's so funny.
Truly a timeless first step in soft launching a gay relationship to your relatives. Right? He's like, okay, what if I had a non-traditional partner, so to speak? What if it was someone very masculine, for example?
What if it was a boy?
Yeah, right? Essentially. He got as close to asking, what if it was a boy as possible? Yeah. And this is really interesting because it does pose the question, like, what is Xiao Chiye, like, how far does he plan to go with, involving himself with Shen Zechuan? Like, it does seem like, at this point, that he's wondering, he's not considering a completely private relationship. It does sound like he would, potentially at least want his family to know
Yeah.
that Shen Zechuan is his person.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of interesting to see. I mean, right now, to the entire world, they're still enemies. Like, nobody, I mean, like, aside from the people, yeah, in their close circle who are, like, truly just loyal to them.
Yeah.
It's a total secret.
They're gay in their little Discord group, but no one
Yeah.
else knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, on Shen Zechuan's side of things, Shi Huangshan was the guy who was with the emperor in the brothel. He's also injured, of course. His legs are crushed, so he's kind of being carried around on a sedan chair. So he ambushes Shen Zechuan with a gaggle of swordsmen when he finally returns to the residence where he left his mentors for safekeeping. Instead of finding his mentors, he finds himself being held at sword point. And Shi Huangshan accuses Shen Zechuan of colluding with Xiao Chiye to incite this whole incident to take him down and reap the rewards. The language he uses puts down Shen Zechuan as a bastard of common birth, with himself being a lawful son from a noble family. Shen Zechuan uses his quick wits to deny the accusations and also deny that he's personally attached to the old men he's been keeping in this residence. He's like, okay, you took them hostage. They're not here. I can see that. But they mean nothing to me. So if you think you can use them against me, it's not happening. Mm-hmm. They secretly mean everything to him. He manages to convince his suspicious partner in schemes that they're still on the same side, and Shen Zechuan scrapes by with his life intact. However, Shi Huangshan has still taken his mentors hostage. He does not give them back at that moment. So Shen Zechuan's next step is to find his fucking masters. Afterwards, we see a revealing moment where Shen Zechuan expresses another vulnerable side of his true feelings. Once he's by himself after this close call, like, he really lets loose with his true feelings, and we see that he is, like, an anarchist, a loose cannon. He does not believe in the order of heaven. He does not believe that there is anything sacred about one's bloodline, even about who holds the throne. Speaking these thoughts aloud is tantamount to treason. But not only has Shen Zechuan been cursed by association of his blood, he's also experienced the rampant corruption, entitlement, and incompetence of those with noble or even royal blood. And so he has a vendetta against the whole concept that puts certain people in power and disgraces other people. Okay, so Shen Zechuan has a kind of a villain monologue moment about this, and we see a lot of his driving thoughts, and it'll be interesting to see what he does with that kind of mentality in the future. Shen Zechuan also has no reverence for those who believe in the inherent superiority or inferiority based on family line. Interestingly, even Xiao Chiye differs a bit in this sense as a gentleman or someone who truly has a noble spirit. His family and its army serves the nation even above the emperor, which makes them a threat, and he has a sense of like noblesse obligée towards his subordinates and the common people as well, which only grows with his own power and standing. In an ideal version of the natural order, the emperor and the nobility would serve their proper roles in protecting and providing for the common folk, even sacrificing themselves for the greater good. Xiao Chiye has the potential and inclination to embody these ideals, while Shen Zechuan considers himself to be driven by vindictiveness and has no interest in being a gentleman or a good person. He returns like for like, and Shi Huangshan will die for what he has done. So that was just a scene that really revealed some differences in character between Shen Zechuan and Xiao Chiye. And I like that because in a book like Thousand Autumns, for example, we see like two characters with very different ideals and how they can still have a relationship. I don't think that the difference between Xiao Chiye and Shen Zechuan are that different, but they're still not identical. They're still approaching from different places. Shen Zechuan is slightly more sneaky and Shen Zechuan at this point is definitely determined to kill his partner in crime at this point.
This will surely go over well with everybody. Ordered to Xiao Chiye, who pulled the emperor out of some rubble and ordered his muscle men to clean some ditches. Yor did it. Awarded to Lu Pingyan, one of the 4 great generals who spent his entire life defending the border from actual invasion.
So meanwhile, Xiao Chiye receives an ambush to the opposite effect. The emperor has recovered from his illness and wishes to bestow a noble title on Xiao Chiye for services rendered, which throws the whole court into disorder. It would be highly improper to do such a thing because noble titles are granted only in rare occasions of military achievement for the nation. But Li Jiangheng has been changed ever since his near-death experience. That horrible close call with mortality made him fully embrace being the emperor, whereas before he was more timid about his worthiness and relied on officials like Hai Liangyi to make decisions. Now he's putting his foot down and using his authority to do what he wants. Eventually, he forces the court into a compromise by granting a higher title to Lu Pyongyan as well. However, that does not help the situation, because the general Lu Pyongyan is retired now, but he was a peer of Xiao Fiangshen, Xiao Chiye's father, and similarly spent his whole life defending the nation. The Lu clan's military situation in Qidong is a unique situation as well. So to fully understand the nuances here, we'll go into that. Unlike the Xiao and Qi clans, it's disadvantaged on numerous points. The Lu clan's territory is unsuitable for farming, so it's reliant on the capital for money to fund its army and rarely gets enough. For Lu Pingyang to receive this long-awaited honor simply to pave the way for Xiao Chiye to receive an unjustified title would actually damage the relationship between the Xiao and Lu clans. When Xiao Chiye receives word of the Imperial edict, he immediately rejects it himself and remains kneeling until he can receive an audience with the Emperor. Because he's thinking, like, not worth it for me to get this title if it's going to damage my family's alliances with other military families. He's still thinking of them, and the Emperor picks up on that as well and suspects him of not being loyal to him, but loyal to his family, which is kind of a looming threat in the back of his mind. The Emperor is pissed that Xiao Chiye did not accept his gift and also sees through his intentions in refusing it, accusing him of being loyal to the Xiao family instead of the throne. Xiao Chiye, however, understands Li Jiangheng's temperament perfectly and is able to convince him not to alienate his loyal and hardworking generals, and to instead extend his benevolence even further. The Emperor thus grants grain to the Lu clan and promotes Third Lady Hua to the title of princess to further elevate her impending marriage to the Qi clan. So essentially he's like, whoa, wait. I'm just rejecting this thinking of you, Mr. Emperor, sir. Like, think about how this is going to make all of the military clans, like, feel jilted, right? Like, why not be the even bigger person and just grant gifts to everybody? So, like, I'll take a title, he'll take a title, he can also take some actual, like, financial gain from this, some actual grain that will actually help him. Even, throw a bone to the Qi family, just make everybody happen. Like, you're the Emperor, you can do that. You can make everybody happy. Yeah. And the Emperor is like, not a bad idea. I love everybody loving me. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So Xiao Chiye finessed that situation, and he's able to accept his promotion without personally slighting the Lu clan. Whew. All of that just for a title.
Yeah. The next time they see each other, they get married in front of everyone's salad. Oh.
Yeah!
Is this the Ballad of Wine?
Yep, we're getting some wine ballads up in this place. So, this whole flood situation, assassination situation, everything kind of calms down a little bit. Spring is slowly arriving, and Xiao Chiye and Shen Zechuan are unable to meet again for over a week thanks to their new promotions. Shen Zechuan was also elevated, skipping ahead to a third-rank official, and now is in charge of the Imperial prison. Perfect place to be if you like to torture people, by the way. It's like very Jingguan Yao up in here.
Right.
But it's like, think about this. The last time they met, they had this like whole passionate lovemaking, and like they're finally like maybe on the same page a bit about their relationship, and then they just can't see each other for a week. Yeah. Bonkers. They finally meet at a banquet with some other officials who bonded over the public ditch flood plague fiasco. The two of them keep up their public pretense of carrying a grudge against each other, and at the behest of the company, publicly make up over a cup of wine.
Aww.
Xiao Chiye pushes the envelope a bit by saying the proper way to make amends would be to share a cup of nuptial wine. Right? So it's like, hey, step up this toast a knot. Like let's make this like a true makeup.
Yeah.
And since we're among bros, this is kind of funny and cute, and everyone's like, yeah, do it! So they link arms and share this cup of wine. Low-key getting married.
That's really
a little
cute.
bit.
That's super cute.
It's very flirty. Shen Zechuan surprisingly doesn't back down from this, and they do share the sexually charged toast with their arms linked, making direct eye contact. It's a whole thing.
I love that. That's really, really good.
Gets even better, baby. Let's move on.
You will not believe the funny business going on beneath this table. Oh.
Also during the banquet, Shen Zechuan even teases Xiao Chiye underneath the table by touching him with his foot.
Oh.
And I need you to understand that, again, this is kind of a moment where like it delves a little bit into this is a little too specific, okay?
Okay.
Like by touching him, I mean full on caressing his dick with his foot. Like this is a foot thing. A little bit. Okay, thankfully it's not the only thing they do, but it
Uh-huh.
definitely delves into this whole territory.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's doing that under the table, getting Xiao Chiye riled up. And also, he is carrying the bamboo fan that Xiao Chiye sent him to replace the intentionally garish ivory fan that he had been using.
Oh.
So Shen Zechuan, like, he's a fanboy, right?
Yeah.
But he had been using a really tacky fan to give the impression, like, he's letting other people think, like, oh, look at this commoner. He's trying to be someone he's not.
Yeah.
Really, like, underestimate him. He doesn't care if that ruins his reputation. You know, he doesn't care if people are looking down on him. He'd rather be underestimated. But Xiao Chiye took this fan and he's like, oh, no, honey, this is not it. I don't care what you're trying to do. Not my wife. And so he has a beautiful bamboo fan sent to him, and and Shen Zechuan's like flipping out this fan, is like, I'm using your gifts.
I'm using your fan, I'm touching your dick.
Yep.
We just got married.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
I know,
God.
this is like totally switched up. Like, Shen Zechuan is like,
I love this for him.
right?
Yeah.
He's like fully on board with Xiao Chiye at this point. He's like, we're doing this.
You may be asking yourself, but when do they fuck on the horse? I was wondering that. I did hear about that. First of all, the horse has a name.
Give Snowcrest some respect, okay? He's been through a lot.
Not Snowcrest.
Okay, so after the dick touching, after the flirting, you know, Xiao Chiye is riled up. The dinner party ends. They go their separate ways. Shen Zechuan is walking home in the rain alone when Xiao Chiye charges out of the night on Snowcrest, sweeping him up in his arms. He is like full on like kidnapping him on a horse. The two of them ride out of the city at full gallop, finally reunited and unable to resist each other. It is at this time that Xiao Chiye finally puts on the long-promised jade earring on Shen Zechuan's ear, marking their mutual claim on each other.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the earring is happening now.
Also, imagine trying to put on an earring.
I'm like, a full gallop. I'm like, oh shit! Like, are your ears even pierced? Like, what the fuck?
That is not the takeaway, but that's so
Right?
funny.
I know. I know.
Oh my God.
I just have to keep reminding myself, like, these are like insanely capable martial artists. I think
Yeah.
they can fucking handle putting on an earring on horseback.
That's so
I could never. But it's funny to think about. I'm like, this is so
It was
romantic.
a clip-on.
Imagine dropping it in the rain and darkness.
Not my kink earring. Literally. Oh God. Okay.
It's like, okay, like, just like give yourself a moment to think about the symbolism, the emotional significance of
Yes.
this fucking earring.
Oh, it's very sexy.
Everything they've been through with like the whole like Shen Zechuan being sick and then them kind of getting on the same page and stuff. Like, it's happening. They are like truly initiating this relationship on so many levels. It only took them 2 volumes, so good for them.
Yep.
Okay. This scene is spoken about a lot as the scene in which they fuck on horseback. But I do have to say, the first time I was reading it, I wasn't entirely sure they went that far.
His robe is tugged open. He closed his eyes as he took Xiao Chiye in his ass.
I guess that could be pretty literal. I guess
You're like taking him in, as in taking in the visage, taking him in. It was like, no, taking his dick into his ass.
Okay, you know what? This might be my bad. I may have
To be
missed
fair,
that.
taking him in is a way to describe, like, I'm taking in the landscape right now, right? Like, it's an expression used for...
To me, I was thinking it was more of like an emotional thing.
Yeah.
But also that would explain the next paragraph, which is a little bit more, again, sexual. Like, striking just the right spot is pretty, like, how many spots can there be? So that would
Stitch, of all the Danmei that you read, your mind was too innocent.
Anyways, that is where this volume decides to leave off. I'm not entirely sure if they'll still be on the horse in the next volume, but that's something to look forward to at least. Also, to be a little bit serious about the scene, like, their brief escape from the capital together at this breakneck pace, the wind in their hair, nobody else in sight, overcome with passion for each other, it's quite significant.
Oh, yeah.
Xiao Chiye's deepest secret and his deepest desire is escape and freedom. And this is something where he and Shen Zechuan are the same. And when Xiao Chiye is upset or homesick, he rides Snowcrest at a wild gallop. Like, this is the closest he can get to the vision of freedom that he has in his mind. And it's also comparable to how Shen Zechuan describes the scent of him, that he's so enchanted with him. Like, this sort of fresh sunlight and wind and this kind of vision of being like on the plains,
Yeah.
like free. And when I read that scene, it really did feel like they are recognizing this mutual unspoken dream between them. So it's like it's like a sexual connection, it's a romantic connection, but it's also this kind of melding of dreams they have together that only each other understands.
That is so beautiful. And it gets reduced down to, yeah, they fucked on a horse.
Right.
Which is like, no, it's such a beautiful scene. Like, even just skimming that while I'm looking for, like, the dirty details, it was so, the language is so beautiful.
Right? Like, it could absolutely just be, like, even without any sexual implications on the scene, like, just him putting on the earring and
It's so
reconnecting.
thematically important and romantic.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just, oh yeah, it's raunchy. Like, that's really incredible. It's the culmination of everything so far. Like,
and so in the next volume, we get to see them as, you know, the beginnings of this sort of power couple. Like, they're going to start working together.
that's so hot.
Right?
Like, not just hot, like sexy hot. Like, oh, that's so hot of them. Like, so cool.
Yeah.
And like,
they are so powerful working together. They are so powerful looking out for each other. I'm so excited to see more of them in this state where they're finally able to trust each other a bit more.
I'm just so happy for them to have this moment.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Love it.
Well, thank you so much for another incredible PowerPoint. If you guys would like to purchase this book or pre-order the next volume, I'll have the links for that down below. And if you guys would like to hang out with Stitch and I every Friday at 7 p.m. PST, we do Danmei game nights where we play games, we talk about Danmei, and it's a ton of fun. So if you'd like to help support our channel, be sure to click join down below. And thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye!